Las Vegas is built on one belief: the house always wins. The casinos have the lights, the cameras, the dealers, the pit bosses, the security teams, and the money. But in the late 1970s and 1980s, a group of students from some of the smartest schools in America looked at blackjack and saw something casinos hated: a weakness. They were not robbers. They were not using marked cards. They were not hacking machines. They were using math. Their names would become part of gambling legend: the MIT Blackjack Team. They trained like athletes. They raised money like a business. They used secret signals like spies. And when the count was right, one player would step to the table and bet big. For years, they walked into casinos across Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and beyond, and turned blackjack into a business. But the more they won, the more casinos started watching. And eventually, the students became the hunted. Welcome to Top 10 Official. Today, we're telling the story of the college team that took on Las Vegas and proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon in a casino is a calculator inside your head. Part 1. Why blackjack is different. Most casino games are built so the player has almost no real control. Roulette is a wheel. Slots are machines. Craps is dice. But blackjack is different. In blackjack, the decisions matter. Hit, stand, split, double down. And more importantly, the cards that have already been played can change the odds of the cards still left in the shoe. That is the crack in the system. If a deck has more high cards left, tens, face cards, and aces, the player can have an advantage. If a deck has more low cards left, the casino has the advantage. Card counting is the process of tracking that balance. It does not require magic. It does not require a photographic memory. It requires focus, discipline, and math. And that is exactly why the MIT students were dangerous. They were not trying to beat the casino with luck. They were trying to beat it with probability. The idea had been around before them. Edward O. Thorp's book, Beat the Dealer, helped prove that blackjack could be beaten mathematically, and earlier professional teams developed systems that later teams would improve. The MIT group took that foundation and turned it into a disciplined operation. Part 2. The first Emmett experiment. The story begins around MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In 1979, some MIT students became fascinated by blackjack after hearing that the game could be beaten. This was not just a casual dorm room conversation. This was MIT. These were people who looked at problems differently. To them, blackjack was not a casino game. It was a system, and systems could be tested. According to widely reported histories of the team, J.P. Massar, then connected with MIT's computer science world, became one of the early figures in the group. A small group traveled to Atlantic City to test their ideas, but their early results were not the movie version of instant success. They struggled. They made mistakes. They learned that knowing the math was not enough. Because in a casino, the math is only part of the battle. You also need nerves. You need discipline. You need to act normal while thousands of dollars are moving across the table. And most importantly, you cannot look like someone who knows exactly what they are doing. Part 3. Enter Bill Kaplan. The early MIT players had the curiosity, but they needed structure. That is where Bill Kaplan came in. Kaplan was a Harvard graduate who had already run a successful blackjack team in Las Vegas using statistical analysis and disciplined team play. When he connected with the MIT players around 1980, the operation began to change from a loose group of smart students into something much more serious. Kaplan approached blackjack like a business, not a hobby, not a lucky night out, a business. That meant rules, training, bankroll management, quality control, testing, accountability. Players had to prove they could count cards accurately under pressure before they were trusted with real money. Mistakes were expensive. A wrong count could cost thousands. A bad bet could expose the team. A nervous player could draw attention. So the team trained. They practiced counting down decks. They ran drills. They studied casino behavior. They learned how to talk, how to sit, how to bet, and how to disappear before security connected the dots. This was not a group of kids randomly gambling in Vegas. This was a math-powered operation, and soon the casinos would feel it. Part 4. How the system worked. The genius of the MIT Blackjack Team was not just card counting, it was team play. A normal card counter has a problem. To make money, they need to raise their bets when the count is good. But when one player suddenly goes from betting small to betting huge, casinos notice. The MIT team solved that problem by splitting the job into roles. First, there was the spotter. The spotter sat at a table, betting small, quietly keeping the count. They looked like a regular low-stakes player. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. Their job was to wait. Then there was sometimes a controller who helped verify the count and protect the accuracy of the play. And then came the most dramatic role, the big player. The big player did not sit there counting for hours. They waited nearby. When the count turned favorable, the spotter gave a signal, a gesture, a phrase, a hand movement, something that looked normal to everyone else. Then the big player entered the game. To the casino, it looked like a wealthy gambler had just randomly decided to sit down and bet big. But it was not random. The big player was stepping in only when the odds shifted. That was the secret. Small bets when the casino had the edge. Big bets when the players had the edge. Over time, that edge could become millions. In later years, the team used a structured version of these roles, and the famous strategic investments era used methods involving spotters, controllers, and big players backed by significant investor capital. Part 5. The training room. Before anyone was sent into a casino, they had to survive the training. This was not like practicing a few hands with friends. The team created a high-pressure environment. Cards were dealt fast, people talked around them, music played, distractions were added. Players had to keep the count while answering questions, drinking soda, laughing, and pretending to be casual. Because in the casino, you cannot stare at the cards like a robot. You have to look human. A good counter must remember the count while acting like a tourist. A good spotter must signal without looking like they are signaling. A good big player must throw down huge bets without looking like they were waiting for an invitation. The team also tracked performance. If a player made too many mistakes, they did not get sent out. This is one of the reasons the MIT team became legendary. They treated gambling like a professional sport. Tryouts, training, roles, money management, performance reviews. And when a player passed the test, they got the chance to do something most gamblers only dream about: walk into a casino with the odds on their side. Part 6. Vegas becomes the battlefield. Las Vegas is not designed to be beaten. It is designed to overwhelm you. The sounds, the lights, the drinks, the free rooms, the illusion that everyone is almost winning. But the MIT team came in with a different mindset. They were not there for the fantasy. They were there for the numbers. They spread out across casinos. One player sat at this table. Another sat across the room. A big player waited nearby. Sometimes they looked like students. Sometimes they looked like wealthy tourists. Sometimes they used disguises, fake names, or completely different personalities. The goal was simple: blend in, wait for the count, strike hard, and leave before the casino understood what happened. And it worked. The team and its successors operated for years, with players connected not only to MIT, but also to Harvard and other leading schools. Histories of the team describe successful operations from 1979 into the early 2000s, with multiple partnerships and teams over the years. But winning from casinos creates a problem. The more money you take, the more people start looking for you. Part 7. The money gets bigger. At first, this was a group of smart players trying to beat blackjack, but eventually it became something much bigger. The team needed money to make money. In blackjack, even with an advantage, short-term losses can be brutal. You can play perfectly and still lose for hours. That is why bankroll matters. The MIT team understood risk. They needed enough capital to survive the swings. So they raised money from investors. This is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. A casino team built like an investment fund, players as operators, managers as partners, investors expecting returns. In the early 1990s, Bill Kaplan, J.P. Massar, and John Cheng formed a Massachusetts limited partnership called Strategic Investments to bankroll a new version of the team, especially around the opening of Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut. Reports say the partnership raised about $1 million in capital. Think about that. Most gamblers bring money to a casino hoping to get lucky. The MIT team brought a business model. They had systems. They had roles. They had investors. They had training. They had data. The casino was running a business. Now the players were too. Part 8. The casinos fight back. Casinos do not like losing, and they really do not like losing to people who make it look repeatable. At first, the MIT players had an advantage because the team structure made them hard to detect. The spotter looked harmless. The big player looked like a random high roller. The signals were subtle. The money moved quietly. But casinos study patterns too. They noticed the same faces. They noticed strange timing. They noticed big bets appearing only when the deck was favorable. They shared information. They used surveillance. They watched betting spreads. They built databases. And over time, the team members started getting identified. Some players were backed off. Some were banned. Some were entered into casino security networks. One important point, card counting itself is generally not illegal because the player is using mental skill, not a device or marked cards. But casinos are private businesses, and they can refuse service or ban players they believe are advantage players. That created the strange reality of the MIT team. They were not usually being treated like traditional criminals, but they were definitely being hunted, not by police at first, by the house. Part 9. The human pressure. The movies make it look glamorous. Young students, Vegas nightlife, secret signals, stacks of chips. But the real pressure was intense. Imagine sitting at a blackjack table with thousands of dollars in front of you. You know the count, you know the math. But the dealer is moving fast. The pit boss is watching. Security cameras are above you. A cocktail waitress is asking if you want a drink. A tourist next to you is talking. Your teammate is waiting for your signal. And if you make one mistake, you might lose the team's money or expose the operation. That pressure broke people. Some players burned out. Some became too recognizable. Some could not handle the swings. Some loved the action too much. And that was dangerous too. Because the team's biggest strength was discipline. The moment a player started gambling for emotion instead of math, they became a liability. The MIT Blackjack Team was not built on luck. It was built on people doing the boring thing correctly over and over again. And in a casino, that is much harder than it sounds. Part 10. The legend goes mainstream. Eventually, the MIT Blackjack Team became bigger than blackjack. Books were written. Movies were made. The most famous was Bringing Down the House, the 2003 book by Ben Mesrich, which helped turn the team into a pop culture legend and later inspired the movie 21. But it is important to say that the book and film versions are widely described as dramatized, and some reporting has criticized the book for exaggerations and fictionalized elements. That matters for your audience, because the real story is already strong enough. You do not need Hollywood fiction. The truth is more interesting. Students and graduates from top schools built a disciplined blackjack operation, raised investor money, trained players like professionals, used math to shift the odds, and forced casinos to change how they watched the game. The MIT Blackjack Team did not destroy Las Vegas. They did not bankrupt the casinos. But they proved something casinos hate. Under the right conditions, with the right discipline, blackjack could be beaten. And for the house, that was enough to make them dangerous. Ending. So were they cheating? That depends who you ask. The casinos saw them as a threat. The players saw themselves as advantage players. And the law, in most cases, did not treat card counting itself as a crime. They were not marking cards. They were not bribing dealers. They were not using hidden computers at the table. They were using memory, math, teamwork, and discipline. And that is what makes the MIT Blackjack Team one of the greatest casino stories ever told. Because they showed that sometimes the most dangerous player in the casino is not the richest person in the room. It is the person who understands the game better than the house expects. For years, the casinos had the cameras, the lights, the security, the money. But the MIT Blackjack Team had something else: the count. This was the story of the students who beat Las Vegas. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to Top 10 Official for more unbelievable casino stories, gambling legends, and real moments when the house lost control. And tell us in the comments, were the MIT players cheating? Or were they simply smarter than the casino?